Hey everybody, welcome to chapter 5 of The Outsiders. Uh, Last we read, something pretty big happened. Johnny stabbed Bob, who was one of the Soch. So Johnny and Ponyboy now are on the run. They went to Dally to get help, and Dally gave them instructions. He gave them enough money, and he told them to get on a train. And currently, our characters are hiding out in a church of Johnny and Ponyboy, and they're laying low for a while. And Dally gave them a gun, and he gave them some cash, and he sent them on their way. And with that, we're going to begin chapter 5. I woke up late in the afternoon. For a second, I didn't know where I was. You know how it is when you wake up in a strange place and wonder where you are, until memory comes rushing over you like a wave. I half convinced myself that I had dreamed everything that had happened the night before. I'm really home in bed, I thought. It's late and both Daryl and Soda Pop are up. Darry's cooking breakfast, and in a minute he and Soda are going to come in and drag me out of bed and wrestle me down and tickle me until I come and die. Um, um, Come out of bed and wrestle me down and tickle me until I think I'll die if they don't stop. It's me and Soda's turn to do the dishes after we eat, after all. And then we'll go outside and we'll play football. Johnny and Two-Bit and I will get Derry on our side since Johnny and I are so small and Derry's the best player. It'll go like the usual weekend morning. I tried telling myself that while I lay on the cold rock floor, wrapped up in Dally's jacket and listening to the wind rushing beneath the trees' dry leaves outside. Finally, I quit pretending and I pushed myself up. I was stiff, sore from sleeping on that hard floor, but I never slept so soundly. I was still groggy. I pushed off Johnny's jean jacket, which had somehow gotten thrown across me, and I blinked, scratched my head. It was awful quiet, with just the sound of rushing wind in the trees. And suddenly I realized that Johnny wasn't there. "Johnny?" I called loudly, and the wooden church echoed me. "Honey, honey?" I looked around wildly, almost panic-stricken, but then caught sight of some crooked letter written in the dust of the floor. "Went to get supplies. Be back soon. J.C." I sighed, went to the pump to get a drink. The water from it was like liquid ice, and it tasted funny, but, at least it was water. I wiped my face on Johnny's jacket and sat down on the back steps. The hill the church was on dropped off suddenly about 20 feet from the back door, and you could see for miles and miles. It was like sitting on top of the world. When you haven't got anything to do, you remember things in spite of yourself. I can remember every detail that whole night, but it had the unreal quality of the dream. It seemed much longer than 24 hours ago since Johnny and I met Dally at the corner of Pickett and Sutton. Maybe it was. Maybe Johnny had gone a whole week and I had just slept this entire time. Maybe he was already been worked over by the fuzz and was waiting to get a lecture chair since he wouldn't tell where I was. Never. I could trust Johnny for that. Maybe Dally had been killed in a car wreck or something and no one would ever know where we were. And I would just die up here alone. And I would turn into a skeleton. Alone. My overactive imagination was running away with me again. Sweat ran from my back and face, and I was trembling. My head swam, and I leaned back and I closed my eyes. I guess it was partly delayed shock. And finally, my stomach calmed down, and I relaxed a little, hoping that Johnny would remember cigarettes. I was scared, sitting there by myself. I heard someone coming up from the dead leaves towards the back of the church, and I ducked inside the door. Then I heard a whistle, long and low, ending in a sudden high note. I knew that whistle well enough. It was used by us and the shepherd gang for a "Who's there?" I returned it carefully, and then I darted out the door so fast that I fell off the steps and sprawled flat under Johnny's nose. I propped myself up on my elbows and I grinned up at him. "Hey, Johnny, fancy meeting you here." He looked down at me over a big package. "I swear, Pony Boy, you're getting to act more like Two-Bit every day." I tried unsuccessfully to cock an eyebrow. "Who's acting?" I rolled over and I sprang up, happy, and someone was there. "What'd you get?" "Come on inside. Dally told us to stay inside." So we went in. Johnny dusted off a table with his jacket and started taking things out of the sack and lining them up neatly. "It's a week's supply of bologna, 2 halves of bread, a box of matches." I got tired of watching him do it all, so I started digging in with the sack myself. "Whee!" I sat down on the dusty chair and stared. A paperback copy of Gone with the Wind? How'd you know I always wanted to read that one? Johnny reddened. Oh, I remember you saying something about it. And me and you went to see that movie, remember? I thought you maybe could read it aloud and, it could help us kill the time. Gee, thanks, I said, and I pulled the book down reluctantly. I wanted to start it right then. Peroxide? Wait, a deck of cards? Suddenly I realized something. Wait a minute, Johnny. You're not thinking. Johnny sat down and pulled out his knife. We're going to cut our hair, and you're going to bleach yours. He looked at the ground carefully. They'll have our descriptions in the paper, but we can't fix them. But we can't be the ones who fit them. Sorry, guys. Oh, no. No, Johnny, not my hair. You're not touching my hair. It was my pride. It was long and it was silky, just like Soda's. And it was a little redder, too. Our hair was tough. Tuff. We didn't have to use much grease on it. Our hair labeled us greasers, too. It was our trademark. The one thing we were proud of. Maybe we couldn't have Corvairs or Maja's shirt, but hey, at least we could always have our hair, and no one ever was going to take that away from us. We have to cut it anyways if we get caught. The first thing the judge is going to do is make us get a haircut. I don't see why. Dally could just as easily mug someone with short hair as he could with long hair, I said. I don't know either. It's just a way of trying to break us. They can't really do anything to guys like Curly Shepard or Tim. They've had about everything done to him, and they can't take anything away from them because they don't have anything in the first place. So what do? They cut their hair. I looked at Johnny imploringly. Johnny sighed. I'm cutting mine too, and I'm going to wash the grease out, I can't bleach mine. I'm too dark-skinned to look blonde, ever. Oh, come on, Pony Boy, he pleaded. It'll grow back. All right, I said. Let's just get it over with. Johnny flipped the razor blade of the switch, took hold of my hair, and started sawing at it. And I shuddered. Not too short, I begged. Johnny, please, okay, please! Finally, it was over with. My hair looked funny, scattered on the floor in tufts. It's lighter than I thought it was, I said, examining it. Can I see what it looks like now? Nah, Johnny said slowly, staring at me. We gotta bleach it first. After I had sat in the sun for about 15 minutes to dry the bleach, Johnny let me look in the old, cracked mirror we'd found in the closet. And I had to do a double take. My hair was even lighter than Soda Pop's now. I never combed it to the side like that either. It just didn't look like me. It made me look younger and scareder too. Boy howdy, I thought, this really makes me look tough. I looked like a plastered pansy. I was miserable. Johnny handed me the knife, and at this moment he looked scared. Cut the front, and then thin out the rest. I'll comb it back after I wash it. Johnny, I said, you can't wash your hair in freezing water in this weather. You're going to catch a cold. He only shrugged at that. Go ahead and just cut it, all right? I did the best I could. He went ahead and washed it anyways using the bar of soap he bought. I was glad I had to run away with him instead of maybe a two-bit or Steve or Dally. That would be the one thing they would never think of. Soap. I gave him Dally's jacket to wrap up in, and he was shivering in the sunlight on the back steps, leaning against the door, combing his hair back. It was the first time I could see that he had eyebrows. He didn't look like Johnny at all. His forehead was whiter where his bangs had been, and it would have been funny if we hadn't been so scared. He was still shivering in the cold. I guess, he said. I guess we're disguised. I leaned back next to him solemnly. I guess so, I said. Oh, shoot, Johnny said with fake cheerfulness. I mean, it's just hair after all. Shoot nothing. It took me a long time to get my hair just the way I wanted it. And besides, this ain't just us. It's like we were suddenly in Halloween costumes and we can't get out of them. Well, we gotta get used to it, Johnny said with finality. We're in big trouble, and it's our looks, or it's us. I started eating a candy bar. Yeah, I'm still tired, I said. To my surprise, the ground blurred, and I felt tears run down my cheeks. I brushed them off hurriedly, and Johnny looked as miserable as I felt. I'm sorry I cut your hair off, Pony Boy. Oh, it ain't that, I said as I took bites of the chocolate. I mean, it's not all of it. I'm just a little spooky. I really don't know what's the matter. I'm just mixed up. I know, Johnny said through chattering teeth as we went inside. Things just been happening so fast. I put my arm across his shoulders to warm him up. Two-Bit should have been in that little one-horse store. Man, we were in the middle of nowhere. The nearest house is 2 miles away. Things were laying out wide open, not just waiting for somebody slick like Two-Bit to come in and pick him up. He could have walked out with half that store. I tell you, Two-Bit could have stole it all. He leaned back beside me, and I could feel him trembling. Ah, good old Two-Bit, he said in a quavering voice. He must have been homesick as I was. Remember how he was wisecracking last night, I said. Gosh, last night, had it really just been one night? When we were walking with Cherry and Marcia over to Two-Bit's? Was it really just last night when we were laying in a lot looking at the stars, dreaming? Stop it! Johnny gasped between teeth. Shut up about last night. I killed a kid last night. He couldn't have been over 17 or 18, and I killed him. How would you like to live with that? He was crying. I held him like soda, and I held him the day we found him lying in the... At this moment, Johnny was crying, and I went over and I held him, just like Soda had held him the day we found Johnny in the lot. I didn't mean to, he finally blurted out, but they were drowning you, and I was so scared. He was quiet for a minute. There sure was a lot of blood in people. He got up suddenly and began pacing back and forth, slapping his pockets. What are we going to do? I was crying by then, too. It was getting dark, and I was cold and lonesome. I crossed my eyes and leaned my head back, but the tears, they were coming anyway. This is my fault, Johnny said in a miserable voice. He had stopped crying when I started. For bringing a 13-year-old kid along. You ought to go home. You can't get into trouble. Gosh, Terry's going to kill you. You didn't kill anyone. No! I screamed at him. I'm 14. I've been 14 for a month, and I'm in this just as much as you are. I'm going to stop crying in a minute, but I can't help it right now. He slumped down beside me. I didn't mean it like that, Pony Boy. Don't cry, Pony. We'll be okay. Don't cry. I leaned against him, and I bawled until I fell asleep. I woke up late that night. Johnny was resting against the wall, and I was asleep on his shoulder. Johnny? I yawned. Are you awake? I was warm and sleepy. Yeah, he said quietly. We ain't gonna cry no more, are we? Nope. We got it all out now. We're getting used to the idea. We're gonna be okay, though, okay? That's what I thought, I said drowsily. And then for the first time since Dal and I had sat down behind those girls at the nightly double, I relaxed. We could take whatever was coming now. And the next 4 or 5 days, they were the longest days I've ever spent in my life. We killed time by reading Gone with the Wind and playing poker. Johnny sure did like that book, although he didn't know anything about the Civil War, and was even less he knew about plantations. I had to explain a lot to him throughout the reading process. It amazed me how Johnny could get more meaning out of some of the stuff than I could. I was supposed to be the deep and smart one. Johnny failed a year in school and never made good grades. He couldn't grasp anything and was shoved in front of him because it was shoved too fast. I guess his teachers thought he was just plain dumb. But he wasn't. He was just a little slow to get things, and he liked to explore things once he did get them, so it took him a little longer. But he definitely wasn't dumb. He was especially stuck on the Southern gentlemen. He was impressed with all their manners and charm as we were reading Gone with the Wind. I bet they were cool old guys, he said. His eyes were glowing after I had read that part about them running into the sure death because they were gallant. Yeah, they remind me of Dally. Dally, I said. Shoot, he ain't got any more manners than I do. And you saw how he treated those girls the other night. Soda's more like one of the Southern boys. Yeah, and the manners department, and the charm too, I guess, Johnny said slowly. But one night, I saw Dally get picked up by the fuzz, and he kept real cool and calm the whole time. They ain't getting him for breaking out the windows in the school building, and it was Two-Bit who did that. And Dally knew that, but he just took the sentence without batting an eye. He never even denied it. That's gallant. This is the first time I realized the extent of Johnny's hero worship of Dally Winston. Of all of us, Dally was the one I liked the least. He didn't have Soda's understanding or dash. He didn't have Two-Bit's humor. He didn't have Derry's superhuman qualities. But I realized that these three appealed to me because they were like heroes in the novels I read. Dally was real. I liked my books in clouds and sunsets. But Dally was way too real. And that scared me. John and I never went to the front of the church. You could see from the front of the road, and sometimes farm kids would ride their horses by on their way to store. We didn't want to be seen. So we stayed in the very back, usually sitting on the steps looking across the valley. We could see for miles. We could see ribbons of the highway and small dots of the houses and cars. We couldn't watch the sunset since the back faced east, but I loved to look at the colors of the fields and the soft shadings of the horizon. One moment I woke up earlier than usual, and Johnny and I slept huddled together for warmth. Dally had been right when he said that it would get cold where we were going. Being careful not to wake Johnny up, I went to sit on the steps and I smoked a cigarette. The dawn, it was coming in. All the lower valley was covered with mist, and sometimes little pieces of it broke off and floated away in small clouds. The sky was lighter on the east, and the horizon was a thin golden line. The clouds changed from gray to pink. The mist was touched with gold. There was a silent moment when everything held its breath, and then the sun rose. It was beautiful. Golly! Johnny's voice beside me made me jump. That sure is pretty. Yeah, I said, wishing I had paint to do a picture while the sight was still fresh in my mind. The mist was pretty, all gold and silver. I said, trying to blow a smoke ring. Too bad I couldn't stay gold like that forever. Nothing gold can stay. I was suddenly remembering a poem I read once. What'd you just say, pony boy? Nature's first green is gold. Her heart is she to hold. Her early lease a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to drink, to grief. So dawn goes down to day. Nothing gold can stay. Folks, I'm going to stop here for a second. I am fairly certain we read this in class before we ended up getting quarantined. I'm 90% positive, so I'm going to maybe look you guys. Anyone in here remember this poem? It's a poem by a guy named Robert Frost. We would have read it with a couple others. He did the poem Row Not Taken that you guys have read. But this poem is called Nothing Gold Can Stay. Nothing Gold Can Stay. And we're gonna talk a lot more about this poem as it goes. If you guys remember, I warned you guys way back in the day that this poem would come up again. This poem is definitely the theme of The Outsiders. In fact, if you look at my t-shirt here, it says, Stay Gold, Pony Boy. So this is an Outsiders t-shirt. And this saying is related to this poem. Johnny was staring at me. Where'd you learn that? That was what I meant. Robert Frost wrote it. He meant more to it than I'm getting, though. I was trying to find the meaning the poet had in mind, but it eluded me. I always remembered it because I never quite got what it meant by it. You know, Johnny said slowly, I never noticed colors and clouds and stuff until you kept reminding me about them. It seems like they were never there before. He thought for a minute. Your family sure is funny. And what happens to be so funny about it? I asked stiffly. Oh, I didn't mean nothing by that. I just meant, well, sort of kind of looks like your mother did, but he acts only like your father. And Darius is split an image of your father, but he ain't wild and laughing all the time like he was. He acts like your mother. And honestly, you don't act like either one. I know. Well, I said, thinking this over. You ain't any of the gang, I mean, I couldn't tell Two-Bit or Steve or Derry about the sunrise and clouds and stuff. I couldn't even remember that poem around them. They just don't dig that kind of stuff. Just you and Soda Pop do, and maybe Cherry Valance. Johnny shrugged. Yeah, I guess we're all different, aren't we? Shoot, I said, blowing a perfect smoke ring. Maybe they are the ones who are different. By the fifth day, I was so tired of bologna sandwiches that I nearly got sick every time I looked at it. We eaten all the candy bars in our first 2 days. I was dying for a Pepsi. I'm what you might call a Pepsi addict. I drink them like a fiend, and going for 5 days without one was going to kill me. Johnny promised to get some if we ran out for supplies and had to get some more, but that didn't help me right now. I was smoking a lot more than I usually did. I guess because it was something to do to pass the time. Although Johnny warned me that I could get sick smoking so much. We were careful with our cigarettes. If that old church had ever caught fire, there'd be no stopping it. On the 5th day, I read up on Sherman's siege of Atlanta and Gone with the Wind. I owed Johnny about $150 from a poker game. I smoked 2 packs of Camels, and as Johnny had predicted, I got sick. I hadn't anything at all, and smoking on an empty stomach doesn't really make you feel too great. I curled up in a corner to sleep off the smoke. I was just about to sleep when I heard, as in a great distance, a low whistle and a sudden high note. I was too sleepy to pay any attention, although Johnny didn't have any reason to be whistling like that. He was sitting on the back steps trying to read Gone with the Wind. I had decided that I had dreamed the outside world, and there was nothing real but bologna sandwiches and the Civil War and the old church in the midst of the valley. It seemed to me that I had always lived in the church or lived during the Civil War and somehow just got transplanted. That shows you what a great wild imagination I have. A toe nudged me in the ribs. "Glorious," said a rough and familiar voice. He looks different without his head like that." I rolled over and sat up, rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, yawning, and suddenly I blinked. "Oh, hey, Dally." "Hey, pony boy." He grinned down at me. Or should I say, sleeping beauty. I never thought I'd live to see the day where I was glad to see Dally Winston. But right then he meant one thing. This would be contact with the outside world. And it suddenly became real and vital. "How's Soda Pop? Are the fuzz looking after us? Is Derek right? All right? Do the boys know that where we are? Do they know we're safe? What? Hold on, kid." Dally broke in. "I can't answer everything all at once. You two want to go get something to eat first? I skipped breakfast and I'm about starving." "You're starved?" Johnny was so indignant he nearly squeaked. I remembered all the bologna that we've eaten. "Is it safe to go out?" "Yep." Dally reached into his shirt pocket for a cigarette, finding none. He said, "You got a Kansas stick, Johnny Cakes?" Johnny tossed him a whole package. "Yeah, the fuzz phone won't be looking for you around here. They think you're out in Texas. I've got Buck's T-Bird parked down the road a little way. Gosh almighty, boys, ain't you been eating anything?" Johnny looked startled. "Yeah, whatever gave you the idea we ain't eating?" Dally shook his head. "You're both pale and you lost weight. After this, get out in the sun more. You look like you've both been through the mill." I started to say, "Look who's talking," but decided it would be safer not to. Dally needed a shave. He had a stubble of a colorless beard that covered his jaw, and he looked like he was the one who had been sleeping in his clothes for an entire week instead of us. I knew he hadn't seen a barber in months, but it was safer just to honestly not get mouthy in front of Dally Winston, so I kept quiet. "Hey, pony boy, I got a letter for you." He fumbled with a piece of paper in his back pocket. "A letter? From who?" "The President of the United States, of course." "Stupid, it's from Soda Pop." "Soda Pop?" I said, bewildered. "How does he know?" "He came over to Buck's a couple nights ago for something and found that sweatshirt. I told him I didn't know where you were, but he didn't believe me. He gave me the letter and half his paycheck to give you. Kid, you ought to see Derry. He's taking this mighty hard. He's really handling it rough." I wasn't listening at this point, though. I leaned back against the side of the church and I read. "Pony boy, well, I guess you got yourself in some trouble, huh? Derry and me nearly went nuts when you ran away like that. Derry is awful sorry that he hit you. You know he didn't mean it. And then you and Johnny turned up missing, and with that dead kid in the park and Dally getting hauled into the station, well, it scared us something awful. The police came by to question us, and we told them as much as we could. I can't believe little old Johnny could kill somebody. I know Dally knows where you are, but you know him. He keeps his trap shut, and he's not going to tell me nothing. Derry hasn't got the slightest notion where you're at, and it's nearly killing him. I wish you'd come back and turn yourselves in, but I guess you can't since Johnny might get hurt. You sure are famous, though. You got a paragraph in the newspaper, even. Take care, and say hi to Johnny for me. Sincerely, Soda Pop Curtis." He could improve his spelling, I thought after reading it 3 or 4 times. "How come you got hauled in?" I asked Dally. "Shoot, kid. Them boys at the station know me by now. I get hauled in for everything that happens on our turf. While I was there, I kind of let slip that you guys were all headed for Texas. So that's where they're looking right now." He took a drag on the cigarette and cussed good-naturedly for being Johnny cool. Johnny listened in admiration. "You sure can cuss good, Dally." "Yeah, I sure can." Dally agreed wholeheartedly, proud of his vocabulary. "But don't you kids go picking up my bad habits." He gave me a hard rub on the head. "Kid, I swear it don't look like you with your hair all cut off. It used to look tough. You used to look tough. You and Soda had the coolest looking hair in town. I know, I look lousy, but don't rub it in. Y'all want to go get some breakfast or not? Johnny leaped up, and I both leaped at the same time. You better believe we want breakfast. Gee, Johnny said wistfully, it sure will be good to get out into a car again. Well, I'll give you guys a ride for your money. Dally always did like to drive fast, as if he didn't care whether he got caught where he was going or not. We came down the dirt road off J Mountain doing 85. I liked driving fast with Johnny, but Johnny was crazy about drag racings, but we both got a little green around those gills when Dally took a corner on two wheels with the brakes screaming. Maybe it was because we hadn't been in the car for so long. We stopped at Dairy Queen, and the first thing I got was a Pepsi. Johnny and I gorged on barbecue sandwiches and banana splits. Gory, Dallas said, amazed, watching us gulp our stuff down. You don't need to make like every mouthful's your last. I got plenty of money. Take it easy, kids. I don't want you getting sick on me. Gosh, I thought I was hungry. Johnny barely ate faster. I didn't know until I got a headache. I didn't tell y'all something, Dally said, finishing his third hamburger. The Soch and us are going to have an all-out war over this city. That kid you killed had plenty of friends all over town, and at this moment, it's Soch against Grease. We ain't walk alone at all. I started carrying a heater, too. Dally, I said, you kill people with heaters. Yeah, well, you can kill them with switchblades, too, don't you, kid? Dally said that in a hard voice. Johnny gulped. Don't worry, Dally went on. It ain't loaded. I ain't aiming to get picked up for murder, but it sure does help a bluff. Tim Shepard's gang and our outfit, we having it out with the socials tomorrow night at the vacant lot. We got hold of the president of one of the social clubs and had a war council. Yeah. Dally sighed, and I knew he was remembering New York, just like the good old days. If they win, things will go on as usual, but if we win, they got to stay out of our territory, but for good this time. Tubit got chumped a couple days ago. Derry and me came along in time, but he wasn't having too much trouble. Tubit's a good fighter, at least. Hey, I also didn't tell you this yet, but we got ourselves a spy. A spy? Johnny looked up from a banana split. Who's your guys' spy? That good-looking broad I tried to pick up the other night. You know, that night you killed a Soch? The redhead. Cherry. What's her last name? Folks, that's the end of this chapter. That's chapter 5. A couple things to think about. One, I want you guys to be clear on something. When they're talking about a heater, that is a slang term for a gun. I guess through the context, I'd hope you guys would figure that out, but just making sure that's what Dally is starting to carry around. Dally lets them know that things have really heated up between the kind of gang rivalries of their town, and they have prepared an all-out brawl to settle things once and for all. The Soch versus the Greasers here. Other things you need to think about, it's actually kind of appropriate for these guys that they are definitely kind of trapped inside for days on end. They can't do anything but just stay inside, and kind of reminds me of our days right now. But everybody, I hope everyone stays safe. You take care. I miss everybody. Have a good one.